Welcome to Dad Pod, a community for dads and men.
You gotta love them boys. I'm hanging with my boys. Just me and my
All right, everybody, welcome to Dad Pod and to today's episode. I'm excited to bring this one to you guys with my dad here. Dad, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Clay. It's always fun to get together and do this program with you. I love it.
Yeah, it's a blast. And this one comes from what we're going to talk about tonight is about I was reading how to win friends and influence people. This isn't like a humble brag or anything. This is in my commute to the car, and I love those self-help books. I absolutely eat those ones up. But there's a really cool letter that he writes that Dale Carnegie found and puts in the book, which is so powerful and really spoke to me. And I hope that more people, maybe most of you have heard this already, but I'm going to rehash it here and read it for you guys here. Hopefully without too many tears. I've read it enough times to hopefully practice that so it's not so choppy. But you might notice some edits here and there. So to make it more, we'll see. What we're going to do is read about it and talk a little bit about the daily things that we experience with our kids, and something that's really crucial to talk about, especially in the relationships, not just with our wife and everyone else that we interact with at work, but also especially our kids. And so, let me pull it up here and read it. So it's called Father Forget, and it's written by, oh goodness, I'm not going to have his name. That's all right. Maybe I'll find it after this. So
You Livingston Larned.
Perfect. Thanks, Dad. Awesome. So the letter starts like this. Listen, son, I am saying this to you as you lie asleep, one little hand crumpled under your cheek and blonde curls sticky over your wet forehead. I have broken into your room alone. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat reading my paper in the library, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. Guilty, I came to your bedside. There are things which I am thinking, son. I had been cross to you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you gave your face a mere dab with a towel. I took you to task for not cleaning your shoes. I called out angrily when you threw some of your things on the floor. At breakfast, I found fault too. You spilled your things, you gulped down your food, you put your elbows on the table, you spread butter too thick on your bread. As you started off to play and I made for my train, you turned and waved a hand and called, "Goodbye, Daddy." I frowned and said in reply, "Hold your shoulders back." And then it began all over again late this afternoon. As I came up the road, I spied you down on your knees playing marbles. There were holes in your socks. I humiliated you before your friends by marching you ahead of me in the house. Socks were expensive, and if you had to buy them, you would be more careful too. Imagine that, son, from a father. Do you remember later, when I was reading in the library, how you came timidly, with a hurt look in your eyes? I glanced up over my paper. At the interruption, you hesitated at the door. "What is it you want?" I snapped. You said nothing, but ran across in one tempestuous plunge, threw your arms around my neck and kissed me. Your small arms tightened with affection that God had set blooming in your heart, which even neglect could not wither. Then you were gone, pattering up the stairs. Well, son, it was shortly afterwards that my paper slipped from my hands and a terrible, sickening fear came over me. What has habit been doing to me? The habit of finding fault or reprimanding. This was my reward to you for being a boy. It was not that I did not love you. It was that I expected too much of you. I was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. There is so much that was good, fine, and true in your character. The little heart of yours was as big as the dawn itself over the hills. This was shown by your spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me good night. Nothing else mattered tonight. Son, I have come to your bedside. In the darkness, I have knelt there, ashamed. It is a feeble atonement. I know that you would not understand these things which I have told you in the waking hours. Tomorrow I will be a real daddy. I will chum with you, suffer when you suffer, and laugh when you laugh. I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying, as if it were a ritual, he is nothing but a boy, a little boy. I am afraid I have visualized you as a man. Yet, as I see you now, son, crumpled and weary in your bed, I see that you are still a baby. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms, your head on her shoulder. I have asked too much, too much. Yeah, so, Dad, what do you think?
I remember when you first shared that with me, and my reactions right then and there, I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I've done those same things. I've had those same reactions where the day was done, and maybe I had a bad day at work or something, and I was already kind of tired and grumpy, and you know, took it out on you guys. I'll say you because you were part of that, of course. And then I also reacted or thought immediately about my own dad and how he treated us, or me and my other siblings as well. And I know he loved us, but he would do that same thing, and with the intention of making us better. I did know that. But I remember specifically after games that I'd play, football, basketball, or baseball, or whatever. And I was excited because I felt like, oh, I had a pretty good game. But then I would come home and he would immediately say, well, you dropped that pass, or you missed that block, or how did you miss that layup, and you struck out, or something like that. And I'm like, oh, couldn't you say, man, that was a great touchdown catch you made, or whatever. I really wanted him to say, you were so good, you did so well. And I know, in looking at that at the time, I regretted, or I didn't see that until I became a dad. And
Right.
then I realized, oh, I'm certain he was proud of me, and was happy that I was doing well, but it didn't manifest itself in the way I thought it should. And so as a dad, I thought, okay, I can do better. I want to do better. Even though I remember saying and doing certain things, it's like, oh my gosh, that's my dad coming out in my voice. Shame
Yeah.
on me. You're a product of your own environment sometimes. So it takes a bit to just, to think about what you're going to say, and how your kids are going to react, and what you want to accomplish there. So yeah, I'm definitely guilty as charged in some instances there, but that's how I was thinking about that, and how I wanted to maybe make a difference or change that, with you guys when you were growing up.
Yeah, and I know we definitely got good praise, and I would say in terms of breaking that generational habit, after we come back from soccer games or something, I mean, I'd see you get really excited about, some play we made, right? Me smashing a ball in volleyball, or scoring a goal in soccer, or making a good play, right? Uh, but I also do know that there were times where you wanted to perfect it, which wasn't a bad, which wasn't is again is not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's like you said, the first things that come out of your mouth, right, is really what makes the impact, right? It's like I'll make the comment about my industry that I work in sales. If the first thing that comes out of your mouth is some robotic criticism, or like, hey, I want to just get my pitch across, they're gonna hang up the phone and they're gonna be done with you, right? And that's the very first thing. Are you speaking to a robot or someone that cares about you, right? uh Before you're able to go into the criticism. And the cool thing about the how to win friends and influence people, the theme throughout the whole book, or the quote that you get from there, is be hearty with your approbation and lavish with your praise. And He goes through many examples of that. In this one, he's specifically talking about our interactions with our kids, and I absolutely love that. And think that if you can have the first words that that come out of your mouth when you first see your kids, whether you're coming home or whether it's just after a game, right? And they're coming to you and looking for something. Don't let those first words be something critical, right? In that letter that we just read, he talks about how he was snapping at his kid to do this thing and do that thing. How many times I can count how many times here in the past in at least the past couple months where I've been like, oh, I'm like trying to create this perfect situation when be careful with that, or hey, don't throw that, or hey, don't do this down the stairs, or hey, don't do that. I'm like snapping at them, trying to control what they're doing, right? Instead of letting them live out as their lives as kids and explore and figure out and fail. And I catch myself doing it all the time, and so this struck me really hard.
Well, and I
And
think it's
so,
a happy medium, Clay, too, because you really have to thread the needle because you do want to provide direction, and you have to create boundaries, of course, with discipline when appropriate and when called for.
Mhm.
But praise, and encouragement, so it's not discouragement. Oh, because too much of that is going to be like, I'm no good at anything, or I'm not even going to try, and so even watching Kyle with the boys, with his sons, right, and watching them play baseball, it's really interesting because they're really competitive and they want to do very well, and especially Brody, he wants, if he strikes out, he's really gets down, and so it's mental discipline, and so it's constantly, hey Brody,
Yep.
consider if you're a pro, those guys that are hitters, they fail 7 times out of 10.
Yeah.
If you get three
Yeah,
times and
exactly.
sometimes more, right? I mean, so as a hitter, if you get three hits out of 10 tries, you're going to go to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
so trying to get that perspective to them and help them with that to be positive is huge mentally. And so telling them that they're going to fail or there's going to be, don't get discouraged because we all do it. I think that's also part of this process as well, or part of our dialogue.
oh yeah, absolutely. And kind of going along with that, it's like Michael Jordan, who's considered the greatest of all time, shot 50 what between I can't remember now. It's somewhere between 48% and like 50% of his shots, all-time shooting percentage, which that's a little less than half or half, right? So if you go in with the expectation, uh well, that's kind of a fine line too, but if you're going to go in with the expectation that you're going to make every single one and then be absolutely distraught if you come off worse than that, then you're going to have a rough time doing hard things in life, right? And so, having this perfectionist mentality, kind of like Brody, I see a lot of myself in him too because I expected myself to be a prodigy at most things that I tried to go into, and I tried to take the shortcut through. I can do this the easy way because I'm smarter, or I'm cooler than other people. I don't have to do it the hard way, and that's just not how it works, man. Your muscles can't learn that way if you're trying to learn a skill that requires muscle effort, and your brain's that way too. And
Yeah.
so,
So being as an adult then, or as the parent, I think having that expectation or helping communicate that to your child will go a lot further, I think, than just criticizing everything, of course, and making them feel like they have to be perfect.
yeah,
I think
exactly, and
I think
something
the
that
other thing here that stuck out to me or came into my mind, Clay, about this was how I was then, more hesitant to approach my dad to ask him things or to, I was more worried about, okay, what's he going to say? He's going to criticize me. I don't want to ask him, right? I'm afraid to approach him. And I didn't want you guys to have that same response about me. So I'm like, okay, I can't be their friend, until later in life. That's when you can be friends with your children, but because you're their parent first. But I wanted you to feel like you could come to me and have tough conversations and be confident that it'd be like, oh yeah, dad's going to be fair and he's going to have a reasonable conversation with me. And he's not going to think I'm this evil person or I'm not perfect or whatever. So I wanted to have a situation like that. I didn't want you to be afraid or to come to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what leads a lot to, the distancing of parents and kids because if they're quick to criticize, it's this whole idea that radical candor, there's a book called Radical Candor talks about this too. You can challenge directly and care deeply or care personally. That's what it is. Care
Mm.
personally on the y-axis and challenge directly, right? And there's quadrants, right? If you don't care personally about this is talking about the people you work with, but the same situation applies to your kids too. You're not going to be able to challenge someone directly, right? Offer that criticism or help them improve if they don't know that you care about them, right? That criticism is going to bounce right off because they're like, well, that's the only thing that my dad does is criticize me. That it's not going to mean very much later in life when you ask them to do things or when you're offering advice, right? When they're asked, if they ask for it. So that you don't want to do that to distance them or, in Brene Brown's case, she talks about this too in Daring Greatly. The first interaction with her kids, if you have the kids come down the stairs, right? If it's your daughter, for example, you don't want the first thing to say, oh, you're going to go out dressed like that. Because then the first thing she thinks, well, dad, the only thing he cares about is the way I appear. Right. And then that turns into some sort of body shame and that's becomes something that she holds on to. Right. And so, this is part of what being careful is about and choosing our words carefully as fathers, right? Which will be one of our calls to action here with this.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Clay, and I think it's important then for us to see our children as real people and with real value, that they have their own personalities, they have their own skill sets, and they have their own traits, and to praise them and to and not false praise. I'm not saying that it's genuine, that hey, I'm really proud of you and point that I really like your caring attitude or Clay, I really think you're just like a very friendly person. You're outgoing, you're positive, you're happy. Those are traits that I was like, oh, I'm just so pleased that you have those gifts, right? And point those out, those positive traits out about them.
Or
Uh,
I'll even get more specific, Dad, because I think there's even something deeper here, which I saw something recently from a child psychologist about if you give praise to the wrong thing, they'll associate their identity with the thing. So you want to make sure to get at the heart of what you're praising for. And I want to say this because there's, kids, and I know that I saw this in my life because I thought I was really smart. And I think when I came across something that was a little more difficult for me, my identity was almost like, oh, wait, hold on. Maybe
who am I?
my world, yeah, who am I? My world kind of came crashing down, right? Why is this hard? I'm smart, right? So instead of being praising for you're smart, it's, hey, I'm really glad that you thought outside I'm really proud of how you approached that problem. I'm glad that you worked hard to do it that like that. Cause then they get that praise and associate it with, oh, I worked hard. My dad thought he was happy with how hard I worked at that thing. So next time when something else difficult comes up, they don't shut down. They go, well, I'll just work harder, or I'll, find a way to work around that. I can do hard things, right? And that's part of that. And so you want to make sure to praise the things that aren't going to link directly to, some
Yeah.
identity things. But yes, I do love that. Hey, I like what you said with being loving and caring. I love how you talked to your sister and you gave her a hug and you said sorry. I'm really glad you did that,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I like
Or
what you said too, Clay, there, and it made me think of something else. You said that you worked hard and you thought about this problem because oftentimes they're going to fail at trying to resolve something,
they'll
right?
quit. They will
And
quit because
so,
they think I'm just
and
too
they're
dumb.
not, yeah, they're not going to do it
Yep.
again. And so, praising them for that attempt and that hard work and saying, hey, it's okay that you didn't get this way
Yes.
or this right out the gate. it's okay. The fact that you tried and you worked hard to get there, you will succeed when you keep trying. You will eventually
Exactly.
get through it. And so, because what happens, what you see and what I'm seeing sometimes in society is people give up too easily, or they're just not going to try because they
And
don't
it's
want to put
because
the
they've been
effort in
told by
because
their parents and their grandparents and everyone else in their circle that they're smart, that they are so gifted, that they have these things. And so that's why they quit so early because, they've been told early on in their life that, well, you can accomplish anything because you're so smart instead of, well, it takes lots of
takes some
practice.
work.
It takes a lot of work. Steph Curry didn't just pull up and start shooting threes
Yeah,
and making threes at the weight that he does because he just happened to throw the ball up in the air and it goes in every time. No, because he
he
gets
had
out
to
there and
practice.
shoots every single day for hours and hours and dribbles the ball for hours and hours. And that expectation versus reality is I think what gets people to shut down and they quit early because they don't realize that that's what it takes. And I see myself doing that, right? And I can
Yeah,
talk all I want, but that's part of that. And it takes practice to be a good dad and it takes practice to, coming kind of recircling back to how this handles with our kids. It takes practice to not snap at your kids. It takes practice to manage your emotions, to not blow up at them, to not snap, to not criticize right off the bat. Let's practice being lavish with our praise and hearty with our approbation. And that
yeah.
take those small moments that you get with your kids and try to think about the big picture. And again, that's letting them fail. And, if we go back to that letter, how he talks about you know, doing the whole, playing marbles outside and putting holes in his socks, right? These are all learning processes. And you signed up for that as a parent. We've already talked about this in one of our episodes, but this is what you signed up for. They're not going to know life when they come out of the womb, when they're birthed, right? And we still don't know. So let them figure that out and manage. And, let's be men and be good leaders and manage our emotions.
So you make a good point there. I want to capture what you just said because let's not be too hard on ourselves too. In that parenting,
100%.
we
Yep.
are going to make mistakes, right?
Exactly.
And so try not to get discouraged or get beat yourself up too much. You got another chance to do it tomorrow. But I would
Yep.
say this, and we probably need to capture this point, Clay, is that it's okay to apologize to your children,
Yeah, I
right?
was just
It's
about to
okay
say
to
that. It plays
say,
perfectly
I'm
into that.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to raise my voice to you last night. I was frustrated.
Yep.
I love you. I'm trying to do my best here for you. And because of my love for you, I just want to help you in so many different ways. And so that's my exuberance behind, what I do, and or however you want to phrase it. That's between you and your child. But
Totally. It'll
yeah,
come out exactly as you say it. And you you as the dad, there's no other person in the universe that's qualified as you to be their dad. There's no one else that can do it because biology makes it so you are the only one besides their mom who loves them as much as you do. And it'll come out as you need to, but um and
well,
that's
no
kind of a
one's going to know
sidetrack.
them as much as you know them because
Exactly.
you spent so much time with them, or because they live
Yeah.
with you. You're going to know them and their traits and their habits and
Or
their
hopefully you will.
I hope so too. I maybe didn't know that, but you're going to know because you've just observed them and seen them and watching them growing up and know their intrinsic characteristics and whatnot. So
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah, and but yeah, I'm glad we're covering that. So kind of those I'm part of those call to actions and I'll sum them up here again too here shortly is just be quick to apologize. When you make a mistake, own up to it and be quick to apologize to your kids. That will go such a long way in helping them realize that you aren't perfect and I promise you don't want them thinking that you're perfect. They'll already think the world of you, but it'll even be better when you can learn to own up to your mistakes. I mean, think about the times in your life when your boss or someone who you looked up to was quick to apologize for a mistake they made, and you know that they made a mistake, and how that affected you. And I think that's just it's so powerful. It's so powerful an image, and it just makes such an impact. And so, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because in the letter he talks about that. He says, I mean, he does it while he's asleep. So I'd probably say do it when your kid's awake,
That's right.
and apologize to him. He did write the letter, and the kid's gonna obviously read it, and they probably will talk about it. But don't wait till he's in bed to do it. Make sure to apologize when they're, when they're awake, and try to be quick about it. But and then, promise to do better, and then do better. Right? Take those small moments and try to remember, whether it's this story or something you want to say. Right? He talks about that at the end, at the call to action for himself. He says at the end, uh, you know, I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying as if it were a ritual. He is nothing but a boy, a little boy. So each one of you that is listening to this, however many are listening to this, but for me too, I'm gonna find, you know, something that I will say, and well, live your legacy, right? We say this after our thing, like, hey, live my legacy. This is, something else I like to say is, this is water, for those of you that read, or that have seen the graduation speech. But
Well,
make that
think
make
of it
that a
this
ritual.
think of it this way, Clay, is that I'm older now, right? And so my memories of my dad are moments in time and key moments in time that left impressions on me. And so when we say live your legacy, live that way so that when those impressions are remembered by your children, there will be those ones you're happy that you left with them, right?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'll sum that up here, right? So let's for our calls to action, because we'll end here. But manage that emotional need for criticism, and making sure everything can be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's okay if it's not perfect. It'll be better for your kids if they realize that they can fail and things won't be perfect. So manage that emotional need that we dads have, whether that's taking a breath, like we said in a different episode, right? You know, counting to 10 or 3, or leaving a pause so that your brain can catch up with your emotions. Be quick to apologize, and then, consider your words carefully before you are going to go into that. So be lavish with your praise, and hearty with your approbation, right? Um, but now I can't remember the last comment I was going to make, which seems typical of me. I get distracted, and then
Sorry, Clay.
I lose track. But no, that's okay. Um, but yeah. So let's make sure to live our legacy, gentlemen, and let's have our ritual thing that we say that will help us in our everyday interaction with our kids before we snap. And I know that as you guys practice, your kids will notice the difference, and so will your spouse and those around you, and you'll start to win friends and influence people, right? Like the book talks about. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, Dad, or things that you want to say?
No, it's always a work in progress. So be patient with yourself, be patient with your children, and just love them, right? Let them know that you love them too. You can't I don't think you can say that too much, to be honest.
Oh
Live
yeah.
your legacy.
Yep. Live your legacy, gentlemen. That's it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks, Clay.
Yep. Thanks.